Adaora's voice shook as she cried, "You stole my husband, Zainab." But Zainab smiled coldly and whispered, "No, Adora, you gave him to me. Welcome to Priska Stories, your guide into a world where shadows speak." Emeka was the kind of man whose presence filled a room with calm. He was tall, gentle-voiced, and carried himself with quiet dignity. Every morning he dressed neatly for work, his shirts crisp, his shoes polished until they caught the light. He never left home without breakfast, and he never left without kissing Adaora's forehead. Adora adored him, not just for his kindness, but for the way he always put his family first. He worked at the bank, a steady job that earned him more than enough to care for her and the children. He never once made her feel like a burden. Instead, he reminded her often, "Adora, everything I have is for you and the kids. What's money if it doesn't give my family peace?" Their children were already in one of the best boarding schools in the state. Emeka spared no expense. He paid their fees early, sent cartons of provisions, and still managed to surprise them with little luxuries they never expected. Visiting days were a festival of joy. The children would run into their father's arms, laughing, tugging at his shirt, while Adora watched with pride in her eyes. In those moments, they looked less like a family and more like a picture in a magazine, the kind of life people prayed for. At home, their routine was simple but beautiful. By 7 each evening, Emeka was back. He didn't linger after work, didn't waste time in clubs or bars. The sound of his car horn was Adaora's favorite music. She would set the table quickly, knowing he liked his food hot. They often ate together, sometimes laughing over stories of their school days, sometimes planning the children's future. Neighbors admired them openly. "Adora, you are lucky," they often said. She would laugh softly, her dimples deepening, and reply, "It's not luck. It's God's grace." But in her heart, she knew her husband's devotion was rare. He was a man who meant every word of his vows. They were not just husband and wife. They were friends, partners, and companions. Their love was the kind that made others believe again. In that home, peace was not just a word. It was lived, breathed, and shared, a sweetness that wrapped around every corner of their lives. Then one bright Saturday morning, when Adora and Emeka stopped by the supermarket to stock up for the week, they strolled together, laughing softly over what brand of cereal the children preferred, when Adaora's eyes suddenly locked on a familiar face. Her heart skipped. "Zainab," she whispered, before her lips widened into a full smile. The woman turned, and for a moment time rolled back 15 years, the sharp cheekbones, the playful eyes. Older now, yes, but still carrying the same fire. "Adora," Zainab exclaimed, dropping the magazine in her hand. In an instant, they were hugging tightly, laughing, rocking each other side to side like schoolgirls who had once shared secrets in the hostel. Emeka watched with gentle amusement, adjusting the shopping bags in his hand. "So, you two know each other?" he asked, his voice warm. "Know each other?" Zainab laughed, pulling Adaora's hand. "This woman was my partner in crime back in university. If I start telling you stories, she'll beg me to stop." Adora covered her face with her palm, giggling. "Please don't disgrace me here." They all laughed, but Adora could already feel the years melting away. The air around them was charged with memories too rich to squeeze into a few minutes. Seeing this, Emeka smiled. "I'll leave you ladies to catch up. I'll be waiting in the car." He touched Adaora's shoulder lightly before walking off. The moment he left, their voices tumbled over each other. They spoke of lecturers who made life miserable, of hostile quarrels that now sounded funny, of classmates who had vanished into the world. Zainab's hands flew as she spoke, her bracelets jingling. Adaora's laughter spilled freely, her eyes watering from the flood of nostalgia. "You haven't changed one bit," Zainab said, squeezing her hand. "Still glowing, still beautiful." "And you?" Adora replied with a grin, still loud. They laughed so hard that shoppers slowed to glance at them, but neither cared. It felt like finding a piece of herself she didn't know she had missed. As they began to part ways, Adora held on to Zainab's hand, reluctant to let go. "Come to my house tomorrow," she said softly, almost pleading. "Please, let's not lose this again." Zainab's smile softened. "I will. I promise. When Adora returned to the car, her face was still glowing. Emeka looked at her with curiosity. She's coming tomorrow, Adora said, her voice light, her heart already full. Emeka smiled and said, no problem. The next afternoon, the house smelled of fried plantain and fresh stew. Adora, excited to host her old friend, had laid the sitting room beautifully. Cushions plumped, fruit basket on the table, and soft music humming from the radio. Emeka had already left for work, leaving the two women to themselves. Zainab arrived in a flowing Ankara gown, her laughter filling the air the moment she stepped in. They embraced again, long and tight, as though they were still university girls sneaking back into the hostel after curfew. Adora, your home is beautiful, Zainab exclaimed, her eyes sweeping across the neatly arranged space. Adora smiled. It's Emeka. You know him. Everything must be perfect. Sit down, Baiko. They sat sipping zobo and nibbling on chin-chin as the conversation flowed. They caught up on classmates, remembered lecturers who once terrorized them, laughed at silly hostile fights, and marveled at how fast life had carried them into adulthood. But as the laughter ebbed, Zainab's tone shifted. She leaned closer, her eyes steady, her bracelets glinting as her hand touched Adora's. Adora, she said softly, I must tell you something about my life now. I am not the same girl you knew back in school. Adora tilted her head, curious. What do you mean? Zainab's lips curved into a knowing smile. I am now a priestess. I was called into tradition years ago. The spirits chose me. I serve them. I guide women. Adora blinked, taken aback. Priestess? You? Yes, Zainab nodded firmly. And part of my work is making sure women do not suffer in silence. You see, I prepare things, roots, herbs, powders, kayanmata, for women who want to tie their cheating husbands. Once they use it, the man sees no other woman but his wife. He becomes blind to temptation, deaf to seduction, his heart, his body, his eyes. They belong to her alone. She spoke with conviction, her eyes glowing as though fire burned quietly behind them. Adora sat still, her chin resting on her palm. The words rolled around her head, heavy and strange. She had heard of such things before, whispered in markets and gossiped in hair salons. But hearing it from Zainab's lips, her dear old friend, made it real in a way it had never been before. Adora adjusted and let out a small laugh, the kind that comes when you're caught between amusement and disbelief. Zainab, she said gently, I don't think I need all that. Emeka is different. He doesn't keep late nights, doesn't whisper with women on the phone. My husband is faithful, responsible. I've never even had to wonder about another woman. Her voice carried pride, and her eyes softened as she spoke his name. It wasn't boasting. It was gratitude. She truly believed she had been given a rare treasure in her husband. But Zainab only smiled, shaking her head slowly, her beaded earrings swinging. She leaned back as though she had heard such words 100 times before. My dear Adora, she began, her tone deep and deliberate. Every woman says this until something happens. Men are like the moon. Today they shine fully on you. Tomorrow a shadow passes, and you wonder where the light has gone. Do not wait until the day you are crying before you act. Adora frowned a little, but Zainab leaned forward, her eyes piercing, her bracelets clinking as she gestured. Have you not heard stories? Good men who suddenly changed. Husbands who swore never to cheat. But one day a strange woman passed by, and their eyes could not resist. Even the strongest tree falls when the right axe strikes. Don't say Emeka cannot fall. He is a man, flesh and blood. Adora hesitated, her lips parting. But he has given me no reason. That is exactly why you should act now, Zainab cut in smoothly. Before there is a reason. Think of it, Adora. Why should you wait for a scandal? Why should you risk another woman testing his loyalty? The wise woman ties her goat before it strays. Prevention is better than cure. Her words fell like drops of oil, sinking deep. Adora stared into her glass of zobo. Her heart tugged between pride in her husband and the sharp edge of Zainab's warning. Zainab's voice softened, almost a whisper. This is not about lack of trust. It is about securing what you already have, protecting your joy. What harm is there in making sure Emeka never even looks at another woman? Isn't your peace worth that? Silence sat heavy between them. Adaora's fingers toyed with the edge of her wrapper. She loved Emeka with all her heart. She trusted him. But Zainab's words lingered like smoke, curling into places she hadn't thought to guard. Zainab reached out, covering Adaora's hand. Her smile was calm, assuring. Let me help you, my friend. Not because you doubt him, but because you love him. And just like that, Adora felt a crack open in her certainty. When Zainab left that day, Adora told herself she would forget everything they had discussed. She busied herself with house chores, prepared Emeka's favorite soup, and tried to let the laughter of the children's phone calls wash away the strange conversation. But Zainab's words clung to her like perfume that refused to fade. The wise woman ties her goat before it strays. She heard it in the silence of the living room, in the hum of the ceiling fan, even in the quiet moments when Emeka held her hand during evening walks. Days turned into weeks, and Zainab did not allow the soil of that doubt to dry. She called often, her voice bright and persuasive. Adora, how are you and your good man? She would begin, always gentle, always teasing. Then the stories would follow, stories of women who had sworn their husbands were angels, only to discover lipstick-stained shirts. Stories of women who once enjoyed perfect peace until another woman whispered her way into their homes. Stories of men who had appeared flawless but eventually embarrassed their families. Just last week, Zainab said one evening over the phone, a woman came to me weeping. Her husband, oh, he was respected in the church, faithful to the eyes of the world. But do you know what she found? Messages on his phone, promises to another woman. If only she had come earlier, I could have tied him for her. Each tale tightened something inside Adora. She would nod silently, her heart battling itself. She trusted Emeka. He had never failed her. Yet Zainab's words painted men as ticking clocks, 1 second faithful, the next undone by temptation. Soon Adora found herself waiting for Zainab's calls. They no longer felt intrusive. They became a kind of companionship. And with each story, Zainab's voice sank deeper into her mind, planting the idea that love alone was not enough. One Friday, after another long call filled with women's heartbreaks, Adora sat in her parlor, staring at the empty sofa Emeka usually occupied. The thought came unbidden. What if one day? She couldn't take chances, so she decided to go and see Zainab. The next morning, she dressed quietly, put on her wig, and stepped out. Her heart beat fast as she walked into Zainab's compound. Zainab was waiting. She smiled knowingly, as though she had been expecting this moment. My dear Adora, she said, opening her arms. You finally understand. Love is sweet, but protection makes it last. Then she led her into her room. But the room was nothing like Adora expected. It was quiet, dimly lit, with a faint smell of incense curling into the air. Wooden carvings stood in corners, and woven mats covered the floor. On a small table sat bottles, calabashes, and clay pots, each carefully arranged as though they carried secrets too sacred to touch carelessly. Adora hesitated at the doorway, clutching her handbag like a shield. Her heart pounded, not out of fear of Zainab, but of crossing a line she never thought she would approach. Zainab gestured warmly. Sit, my friend. Do not be afraid. Here, women find solutions, not problems. Adora lowered herself onto the mat, her eyes scanning the strange objects. She felt like a girl again, caught between curiosity and caution. You see these things, Zainab began, picking up a small gourd tied with red thread. They are not evil. They are the wisdom of our mothers passed down for generations. Men are men, full of desires, easily distracted. But a woman who knows her place in tradition has nothing to fear. She ties her man to herself and sleeps in peace. She untied the gourd, and a sweet, earthy scent filled the room. Inside was a thick reddish paste. This, Zainab said, her voice dropping low, is for you. Just a little in his soup for 1 week, and Emeka's heart will never wander. His eyes will never see another woman. You will be the sun in his sky, the only tree in his forest. Adaora's breath caught. She thought of Emeka's laughter, his steady loyalty, The way he rushed home by 7 every night. Did she really need this? Her fingers trembled as she reached for the gourd, then withdrew quickly, as though it might burn her. Zainab, I told you my husband has never given me trouble. Zainab smiled knowingly, leaning closer, her eyes shining like coals in the dim light. And that is why you must act now, because no one expects a storm when the sky is clear. Do you want to gamble with your peace, Adora? Do you want to wake one day and find another woman's perfume on his shirt? Prevention is not doubt. Prevention is wisdom. The words slid into her like a knife wrapped in silk. Adaora's chest rose and fell. Her palms felt damp. She reached out again, this time letting her fingers close around the gourd. The surface was cool, almost alive. As she held it, a shiver ran through her. Part of her wanted to drop it and run, to leave things as they had always been. But another part, the part Zainab had been whispering to all these weeks, told her it was love, not fear, that made her do this. Zainab covered her hands with hers, smiling softly. Do not worry, my friend. This is not betrayal. This is protection. With this, Emeka will be yours, body and soul, until the end of time. And in that quiet room, Adora swallowed hard, the weight of the gourd pressing into her palms. After a few hours, she stood up and went home. She kept the gourd hidden in her kitchen cupboard for 2 days. Every time she opened it, her eyes darted to where it lay between sacks of rice and tins of milk. She told herself she didn't need it. She told herself Emeka's love was enough. But Zainab's voice haunted her. Do not wait for a storm before tying your roof. Prevention is wisdom. On the 3rd evening, Adora found herself untying the red thread. The paste inside smelled sweet, almost inviting. With trembling hands, she stirred a little into the pot of soup simmering on the fire. The steam rose and wrapped around her face like a secret. When she served Emeka that night, she watched him carefully. He ate heartily, thanking her as always. He didn't notice the difference in taste. He kissed her cheek, wiped his mouth, and leaned back with a satisfied sigh. Adora exhaled too, her heart fluttering with relief. Perhaps this was nothing dangerous. Perhaps it was only a shield, just as Zainab promised. For a week, life carried on as usual. The children called from school. Emeka returned home by 7, and Adora told herself she had done the right thing. But then one evening, something shifted. It began with something small. Adora forgot to add enough pepper to the stew. Emeka tasted it, and instead of his usual teasing, his face hardened. Adora, are you blind? How can you cook like this? He barked, slamming the spoon on the table. The shock froze her. Never in their years together had he raised his voice like that, let alone slammed anything. She tried to laugh it off, tried to remind him it was only food. But before she could finish, his hand shot out and struck her cheek. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. Adora staggered back, her palm pressed to her face, eyes wide in disbelief. Emeka stood there breathing heavily, then turned away without a word. That night, he didn't kiss her forehead before bed. He lay on his side, his back to her, and fell into a restless sleep. The days that followed unraveled like threads from a cloth. Emeka began returning later and later from work. At first it was 8 o'clock, then 9, then midnight. His shirt smelled of strange perfume. His eyes, once warm and steady, grew cold, distant. Adora watched helplessly as the man she had loved, the man she thought she had secured, slipped further away from her grasp. She tried to question him once, gently. Emeka, why are you coming home so late? He turned sharply, eyes blazing. Must you nag me? Do you think I live for you alone? Her lips parted, but no words came. The more Emeka changed, the more Adora felt herself unravel. His temper grew sharp like a blade, his presence colder than harmattan winds. The man who once kissed her before leaving for work now walked past her as though she were furniture. At night, when she reached for him, he turned away, muttering excuses or feigning sleep. By the 3rd week, he had stopped coming home altogether. On some nights, Adora sat alone in their wide bed, the silence pressing down on her chest. She thought of their walks together, their laughter over dinner, the way he once looked at her like she was the only woman alive. Tears often slipped down her cheeks as she stared into the darkness, her heart aching with questions. In her confusion, only one thought took root. Zainab will know what to do. After all, she had promised this would protect her marriage. She had sworn it would make her husband hers forever. So, one humid evening, when Emeka didn't return again, Adora wrapped a scarf around her hair and made her way to Zainab's compound. Her footsteps were heavy with both hope and fear, each one echoing louder in her ears. The compound was alive with the scent of burning herbs and low drumming from a distant corner. Adaora's stomach tightened as she climbed the short steps to Zainab's door. She didn't need to knock. The door was slightly open. Voices spilled out. Laughter, deep and familiar. Emeka's laughter. Adora froze. Her heart slamming in her chest, she pushed the door gently, and the sight before her crushed the air from her lungs. There, in the soft glow of candlelight, was Emeka, sitting on a low couch, his shirt half open, his arm draped possessively around Zainab's shoulders. His face, once so tender with her, was lit with warmth she hadn't seen in weeks. Zainab leaned into him, her bracelets jingling as she touched his chest, her laughter spilling into the room like wine. Adaora's knees trembled. She gripped the doorframe, her eyes wide, her breath shallow. For a moment, she couldn't move, couldn't speak. The world tilted violently. Zainab's eyes flicked up first. She saw Adora and smiled. Not with shame, not with guilt, but with a calm, victorious curve of her lips. It was the smile of someone who had laid the trap long ago and was now watching it snap shut. Emeka turned lazily, his expression unreadable. No surprise, no guilt, just a cold detachment, as though Adora were the intruder in a home that no longer belonged to her. Adora, Zainab said smoothly, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. You came. Adaora's body trembled as she stepped fully into the room. The air was thick with the scent of incense, but it was the sight before her that robbed her of breath. Her husband, her Emeka, wrapped around Zainab as if he had never belonged to anyone else. Emeka, her voice cracked like glass. The name rang in the room, startling him for a moment. He turned toward her, eyes heavy, almost dazed. Adora, what are you doing here? His voice was not angry, not guilty, just cold, like he was speaking to a stranger. Her chest heaved, words tumbling from her lips. This is what you've become. This is what those late nights meant. Zainab, my friend, my sister, how could you? But Zainab only laughed, low and mocking. She rose slowly, her wrapper swaying, and stood between them like a queen before her subjects. Adora, my dear, stop behaving as if you didn't hand him over to me yourself. Who gave him the food? Who carried my charm into her own home? Who opened the door? You did. Adaora's eyes widened. The gourd, the paste, the soups. Her knees buckled beneath her. No, no. You promised. Zainab's smile was cruel. I promised protection. But power does not serve two mistresses. You came to me in weakness, and weakness has a price. Emeka rose now, his face unreadable, his once soft eyes shadowed with something darker. He stepped forward, and for the first time in her life, Adora felt fear in her own husband's presence. Go home, he said flatly. Go home before I forget myself. The words pierced her like knives. This was the man who once laughed with her over burnt stew, who kissed her hand in crowded places, who prayed with her for their children's success. Now his voice was void of love, emptied of everything that once made him hers. Adora lunged forward, grabbing his arm, tears streaming down her cheeks. Emeka, please. It's me, your wife. Look at me. Remember me. Don't let her do this to us. But he flung her off with a force that sent her stumbling into a wooden stool. Pain shot through her side. Zainab's laughter filled the room, rich and merciless. You see now? Love is nothing without power, and you, Adora, have none. Adora crumpled where she fell, her sobs choking her. She had come to secure her marriage, to protect what she thought was already safe. Instead, she had opened a door she could never close. As she staggered to her feet and stumbled toward the door, she caught one last sight of Emeka, his arm draped once again around Zainab, his eyes fixed anywhere but on her. Her chest rose and fell as she stood rooted in the doorway, her eyes wide, her voice shaking. Zainab, so this was your plan all along. Zainab tilted her head, her smile slow and mocking. My dear, why are you surprised? Did you not come to me with your fears? Did you not beg me for help? You opened the door, Adora. I only walked through it. Adora stepped forward, her hands trembling but her voice growing louder. You call this help? You stole my husband. You turned him against me. Emeka shifted uncomfortably, his eyes glazed as though he was present but not fully there. He rubbed his temples, frowning. But when he looked at Adora, there was no recognition, no warmth, only irritation. Why are you shouting? Leave, Adora. Go home. The words stabbed deep, but Adora pressed on, her tears spilling freely. Emeka, it's me, your wife, the woman you loved, the mother of your children. This is not you. Can't you see it? Zainab laughed, her bracelets clinking as she stepped closer. You still don't understand, do you? Emeka is not under your love anymore. He is under my power. You fed him my charm with your own hands. You gave me the keys to his heart. I didn't steal him. You delivered him to me like a gift. Adaora's legs buckled, but she held her ground, desperation twisting her face. Zainab, please. We were friends. We shared everything in school. How could you betray me like this? The priestess's smile faded into something harder, sharper. Because friendship is not enough for me. Power is, and power demands sacrifice. You were too blind to see it. Adora lunged at her, gripping her arm. But Zainab stood firm, her voice rising like thunder. Remove your hands from me, Adora, or do you want me to show you how powerless you truly are? The candles flickered violently, a sudden gust of wind rushing through the room though the windows were shut. Adaora's grip loosened. She stumbled back, her chest heaving, her tears choking her. Emeka rose then, his arms slipping back around Zainab's shoulders as if guided by unseen strings. His voice was flat, distant. Go home, Adora. Don't come back here again. For a moment, silence hung heavy, broken only by Adaora's sobs. She looked from her husband's empty eyes to her friend's triumphant smile, and realization sank in like a blade. She had lost him, not to another woman's beauty, not to temptation, but to the very spell she invited into their lives. Adaora's knees hit the ground. God, what have I done? She whispered. Zainab only watched, her eyes gleaming in the dim light. Adora did all she could and even prayed for 3 weeks. But the house that once rang with laughter now echoed with silence. Emeka no longer came home, no longer asked about her day, no longer teased her about burning stew. His absence was not a gap. It was a wound festering deeper each night he didn't return. At first, Adora told herself it was temporary. She cooked his favorite meals, set his plate on the table, and waited by the window until her eyes burned. But the food grew cold, and her heart cracked a little more each night. Then one morning, Emeka came back, not with flowers, not with apologies, but with 2 of his relatives. He stood in the center of the sitting room like a stranger who had come to evict a tenant. Adora, he said, his voice flat. Pack your things. You must leave. I've moved on. This is no longer your place. Adora stood frozen, the words hanging in the air like stones hurled at her chest. Emeka's voice was flat, lifeless, his eyes glazed and far away. The man who once kissed her hand in crowded markets, who never let her carry a heavy load, who hurried home by 7 every evening, now looked at her like she was a stranger trespassing in his house. Moved on. Adora repeated, her voice breaking, her lips trembling. Emeka, how can you say that to me? To us, after everything? But his face did not soften. No flicker of recognition, no shadow of guilt, only a chilling detachment. He turned slightly, as if even standing in front of her was a burden. Then one of Emeka's relatives, avoiding her eyes, walked into the bedroom and returned with her clothes bundled into nylon bags. They dropped them carelessly at her feet, the sound of the nylon hitting the ground echoing louder than thunder in Adaora's ears. Her legs buckled. She fell to her knees, clutching at the bags, her tears dripping onto the dusty floor. Emeka, please, she whispered. But the man she had built her life around did not bend, did not reach for her. With her heart breaking, Adora carried her bags out of the compound that evening and dragged herself to the church, dropped her wrapper on the floor, and lay there weeping until sleep finally smothered her cries. All night her mind replayed his words, "Moved on. This is no longer your place." The sentences struck again and again like hammer blows to her chest. By the following evening, something inside her refused to accept it. She told herself Emeka must have been confused, angry, not in his right mind. She would go back, talk to him calmly, remind him of their years together, of their children, of the love they once shared. Surely, if she looked into his eyes and pleaded, the man she knew would return. She decided to go back and try again. Her heart raced as she approached the compound. The familiar walls loomed before her, but instead of comfort, they carried a new weight, a strangeness that made her palms sweat. She pushed the gate open gently, her eyes scanning for him. And then she saw it. Wrappers on the clothesline, bright, bold fabrics she had never owned, beaded bangles glinting in the evening sun. And then, stepping out of the house with the ease of a woman who owned it, was Zainab. For a moment, Adora froze. Her breath caught, her chest tightened, her knees trembled. She blinked, praying her eyes deceived her. But no, it was Zainab, her old friend, her confidant, the very woman who had handed her the gourd with a smile. And Emeka was beside her. He carried a bucket of water, his shirt half-buttoned, his face relaxed in a way it hadn't been in weeks with Adora. When Zainab reached out, he leaned into her touch, allowing her arm to drape across his shoulders as if it belonged there. Adaora's world spun. The man who once rushed home to her, who never missed their children's visiting days, now stood openly in the arms of her friend. Her throat went dry. "Emeka," she whispered, stepping forward, her voice breaking. But Zainab saw her first, and she smiled. Not a friendly smile, not even a pitying one, but a slow, cruel smile that curled with triumph. Her eyes locked with Adaora's across the compound, gleaming with mockery. Emeka turned at the sound of his name. His gaze landed on Adora, but there was no recognition, no warmth, only irritation, as though she were an intruder disturbing his peace. "Why are you here? Didn't I tell you to leave?" The words struck like lightning. Adora stumbled back, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. "Emeka, it's me, your wife. You're Adora. Don't you remember?" But his arm only tightened around Zainab's waist. Adaora's vision blurred with tears as she turned and staggered away, her heart tearing apart with every step. For Adora, the lesson was carved not on paper, but in blood and tears. Love is strong, but trust in the wrong hands is deadly. She had once held everything: a faithful husband, a peaceful home, children who adored her. Emeka was the kind of man women prayed for, and she had been blessed with him. But fear opened a door, and in seeking to secure her blessings, she lost them all. Her story spread quietly, whispered in markets, retold in hair salons, murmured in church gatherings. Women shook their heads whenever her name surfaced. Do not let anyone plant doubt in your heart where peace already lives. Do not hand over your joy in the name of fear, because some mistakes will cost you everything you love. Adora lived on, not dead, but broken, not widowed, but abandoned, carrying a wound that no ointment could heal. The church became her home, its cold tiles her bed, its altar her pillow. Night after night, she bent her knees in prayer, her tears soaking the floor, her voice raw with pleas. "God, restore my marriage. God, deliver my husband. God, forgive me." And though the shame weighed on her shoulders like a millstone, Adora clung to hope with the last of her strength. She believed that the same God who once gave her Emeka could bring him back again. We hope and we pray that, by the grace of God, her marriage will be restored, that one day Emeka's eyes will clear, the spell will break, and he will remember the woman who once shared his dreams, his laughter, his life. But as of the time of this story, Adora still lives in the church, waiting, praying, and holding on to faith, hoping the God of mercy will rewrite her ending. Moral lesson: trust is the backbone of love. When fear and doubt creep in, they destroy what is already whole. Adaora's mistake was listening to the wrong voice and seeking power where there was already peace. Her story reminds us, never let insecurity and outside influence blind you to the blessings you already have. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.